So thanks for joining us today, Cheryl. I'm looking forward to having a short conversation with you, but just in case not everyone knows who you are, can you introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Cheryl Hung. I'm a speaker and engineer from London. I'm previously been at Google and Apple, but most well known from my time in the open source Kubernetes containers community.
Cool. And you're going to be talking about authorization, authentication, or like techies like to abbreviate it just as auth to keep it open. And that's kind of a critical thing in software systems, right? Authentication, authorization, that's the stuff you need to get right because there is a lot at stake if these things don't work. Does that mean that you should not try to be too inventive in these areas and rather stick to standards and established products? What do you think?
Well, so first let me distinguish between authentication and authorization, because actually I'm going to focus on authentication, which is the who you are part of the problem, and authorization being the what you can do is a different problem as well. And I kind of like this problem of authentication because everybody understands it. Even if you're not technical at all, you've seen a login page where you need to put your username, your password. Everyone knows you can log in with Google or Apple or whatever. So on the surface, it seems like a pretty easy, very well understood, very widespread problem. And the more you dig into it, the more you realize that actually this is a problem of standards, because all these systems have to work together and understand the same thing. It touches everything. It's across people and countries and companies and organizations. The more you look into it, the more interesting it gets also from a software architecture point of view, because you expect it to be highly available, basically every part of your system. So what looks like a very simple, easy, everybody knows it kind of problem gets more and more interesting the more you look inside.
I have the feeling that no one really understands stuff like OAuth 2 or stuff.
Yeah, nobody does.
Things are overly complicated and people get it wrong a lot.
Definitely you have to be careful with it. There's no room for error. I mean, the minute that you have any kind of security flaws, these are things that can be exploited and cause you a lot of damage. So it's a problem that a lot of companies don't want to spend any time on, but yet you have to get it right. So part of my talk that I'm going to give in this conference is the classic, build it versus buy it problem, right? Do you spend your time and invest your team's time into it, or do you try and kind of outsource it and have some other company handle it? And there's definitely no simple answer here.
Okay, I was hoping you'd just say you always have to just buy it because there is no room for improvement anymore. It's a solved problem. It's not like that.
Oh, it's definitely not a solved problem. But part of the problem is our idea of a good authentication system is more complicated now than it was 5 or 10 years ago. 5-10 years ago, people didn't always expect like biometrics, Touch ID, you can log in with your device. Even now, there's lots of things that have multi-factor authentication, but not everything. And, the expectations are higher now. Therefore, the problem is more complicated now. The user experience is more complicated now. So I don't think it's going to be a solved problem, sadly.
Okay, let's hope for it getting easier, at least in the future, maybe.
Well, do you think that technical problems get easier over time?
I'm a bit skeptical because there are things out there that kind of they solve real problems, but they also kind of not really in total reduce complexity. They just shift complexity. I often say that about Kubernetes, for example. Mm-hmm. It solves problems. It kind of really makes things easy, but when you have it in total, you often don't feel that as a sum of all things, I have an easier life now.
Yes.
Agree, or is that?
I 100% agree with you. I think the sort of simple problems are simpler, and then the more complex problems is just a different kind of complexity. But I don't think that is a bad thing, because I think this is the progress of expectations, what we want from our products, what our standards of security mean, what our standards for scalability and reliability mean, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Okay, so it's a thing that it enables us to have like higher value problems now and that we need to solve, maybe like that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm going to talk about in this talk, in this keynote, is what vibe coding can do. So vibe coding, if people haven't come across it before, is this, AI coding where you just kind of accept what the AI gives you, and you kind of try and specify what you can and just see how far you can get. So I've kind of tried this and played with this, and you realize AI is really good at giving you a really nice looking interface, but you still need the domain expertise. You still need to know like what are OAuth standards to be able to ask about it. You need to know what good security practices are. You need to know what good testing looks like. You need to know how to integrate it into the rest of your production system. So I think actually the value of just coding it seems to be shrinking, and the value of having a software architecture mindset where you ask all these questions about what if, are getting more valuable.
Getting into this question of generative AI, and you've been like pretty active in this world of cloud native, and I would say it's kind of evident today that within the last 10 years, certain things like infrastructure as code, containerization, stuff like Kubernetes have like really severely changed how we develop software and how we run software, in not everywhere, but in very many areas of software development. So it's really different today. And now, of course, comes this Oracle question. So if you compare this, there was kind of hyped technology also, which has reached this plateau of productivity today. But now we're definitely in this hype around generative AI and LLMs and so on. What's your feeling? Is that really such a fundamental shift comparable to how different software operations are today when you compare these two hypes? Do you feel the same?
The $1 million question. I think anyone who has a technical role is asking themselves exactly this question. Like, is AI all hype? Is it all a big bubble? Or is it really going to change everything and we're all going to be out of jobs and whatever else? I think for a long time, I was very skeptical about it. I was like, oh, it's always going to be, you're always going to need a human somewhere in the loop. The AI is not going to be able to figure it out. I have to say, probably last year, I've begrudgingly accepted that, I think this is going to change a lot of technical, the straightforward coding kind of part of it. And then I make how we as humans now have to spend more time thinking and less time coding. So, I don't know the answer to that. I will be really curious to see what you think and what other people at our conference think about this. I think I came across the term vibe coding in, spring of 2025? So, very early on, one of my friends said, you have to try it. And, a lot has happened in 6 months. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what other people think.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to finding out what remains of these hypes, because there's sometimes no air left in the room sometimes when you bring up certain topics, and then you wonder is that a case of inflation of breathing? But we'll see. I don't know myself. We'll see. Remains, and hopefully, and for most hypes, some things remain that are valuable. But we've seen hypes that turn out to have almost zero value. We've seen things that turn out to be really vaporware, but I guess we already agree that this is not the case with this generative AI and LLM stuff. It's not complete nonsense by now. We can.
Wow, it's not complete nonsense, and yet, one of my favorite talks that I saw recently was from eBay, where for about 2 years they had given the same talk saying, we tried to use AI, we haven't found any useful use cases for it. And then the third year, they said, we finally did something with AI. What we can do now is have it read our logs and give suggestions for where problems came up. You know, where in the code might have caused this problem, which, you know, is very useful. And, you know, us as platform engineers, you know, that helps, or SREs helps us with our job. But you have to think 3 years of trying to make AI useful for eBay users. And, you know, this is the best that they could come up with. I was like, it feels, there's definitely a lot of hype. There's something useful, but
expectations are a bit higher in general, right?
Exactly. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm an optimist. I think, you know, there's so many people looking at this, so hopefully something brilliant is going to come out of this.
But there is another area I wanted to ask you about, because when I read about what you did, is you've been very active in something people call community building. Why does that matter to you?
As I really fundamentally believe in bringing people together to build the future. In my case, you know, cloud and infrastructure, but people have, I really think people are brilliant. People's ideas, when people get together behind a common vision and a common goal, and especially, you know, enabled through open source, which I'm a big fan of. I think this really matters, because ultimately everything that we're creating should be to make people's lives better. So I'm also, you know, community building for me is fun. I've started a group called Cloud Native London about 8 years ago. Grew it to 10,000 people. We've had over 100 meetups now. Every time that I go there and I see people come in and they tell me like, hey, I learned about this topic, I got a job through this, you know, I met other people that I'm now really good friends with. It just makes me very happy. Makes me feel really good that people can get together and, you know, makes a big difference for their lives.
So there are like new people coming in every time, or is it a group that kind of has found themselves?
Usually it's about 50-50. Of like returning people versus new people. There's always new people coming in, and I appreciate this, because part of the important thing for me building this group is that we would always welcome new people into it. There were always people who are at the beginning of their journey with technology or with cloud or with software, and there's a lot that people can share and learn just from their own experience. You know, you don't have to be a 0.1% genius in the world. You just have to go out and share the stories about what you know and help other people. So I'm a really strong believer in that. Everyone has something to share. Everyone has valuable experience.
Like a slightly technical question, because when you're organizing something like this, you probably can answer like, you've lived with this meetup community through the pandemic. That of course had an effect on how this community works and how meeting or not meeting in person and so on works. Has everything gone back to normal, or has like community work in software changed on the long term?
Well, you know, we're talking through Zoom now, right? So things have changed a little bit for sure. Things are not back to, I don't want to say normal, because that was normal for the time. You know, before the pandemic, we were getting over 300 people every month. So it was like a conference size every single month. Now we're about 80 people every month, because people are working from home. They don't want to come in as much. During the pandemic, you know, went full virtual and then came back after a year and a half. So it's been tough to build community in this more online era, but people still value being in the same room as other people. You know, there's a lot of energy that you can get from being in the same place as people that you just can't get online. So I'm thrilled actually that the pandemic's over and we can get back in the same room, we can have conferences again, we can go and share, go have drinks together, go eat pizza together. It's small things, but I think the pandemic has made people more aware of how valuable these connections are.
To tie these two things together a bit, I was wondering if since you work with lots of people and you meet people and you see how they talk about the technical topics and so on and how things are discussed, maybe you see like also an effect of like the availability of these chatbots and AI agents and this chance of having this non-human collaborator or not in conversations? Does that already have like a tangible effect on like community work and open source work that you see, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's still in the early stages. Yeah, I don't think I've seen an area where I can say someone has come in and sort of replaced that community effort with an AI agent. I think also the further you get in your career, the more you realize the relationships with people really matter. Mm-hmm. And those cannot be easily replaced. So I feel positive about it. I think even in the age of like social media and AI and everything, there's still a place for the people, for the real people in this.
So Cheryl, when we talked about this community work that you do and these regular meetups you have, there is also this other part of community work in software and the software, and it's this conference circus, like people going there as guests or even speaking as speakers. Is that a thing you do a lot, and why?
I try and do as much as I can. I do have a family, so travel is harder now. But I find conferences really, really valuable, especially in-person ones, of course, where you have this hallway chat. You can go and talk to other people, discuss the sessions that you just heard. I find I get so many great ideas from talking to people. And, it really just helps you get some inspiration back. Sometimes we get so bogged down in our day-to-day work, we sort of lose track of all the other fun stuff. Why technology is fun, why solving these problems in new ways is fun. So I often find I come back from a conference really energized, really like happy to be working on new problems again. And yeah, it's really fun for me.
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. That was kind of like a also pretty good final statement. So I don't want to add anything. I just want to say thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference and hearing your keynote.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Okay.